Welcome back, clients and guests, to my channel. My name is Jason Serro, and I'm a licensed professional counselor located in Connecticut. My videos are designed to educate and empower you to make informed decisions about your mental health. Please like the video, subscribe, and pass this along to friends and family if you think it will help them in some way. I am pleased to introduce to you Jeff Post. Jeff is the fire chief in Center Groton, one of the assistant chiefs at the Submarine Base Fire Department, where he supervises 20 firefighters, and is a firefighter in Mystic and Gales Ferry, Connecticut. Chief Post lives in Gales Ferry, Connecticut with his wife of 19 years and their 2 children. If that wasn't enough activity in his life, he is also a youth baseball coach and an undergraduate student at Southern New Hampshire University, where he is studying psychology with an end goal of getting licensed as a professional counselor. I'm thankful and grateful he was able to take time out of his busy schedule to sit and talk with me about various topics that include mental health in the firehouse, how important first responders are to our mental and emotional well-being as a community, and discuss his own personal resilience in climbing the ranks of his profession while addressing his own mental health and alcohol struggles. I've been privileged to have witnessed Chief Post's tireless efforts in providing assistance and guidance to firefighters, first responders, friends, and family who have struggled with their own mental health over the years. I hope you enjoy listening to his experiences and wisdom as much as I do. Without further ado, Chief Jeff Post. Jeff, I want to thank you so much for meeting with me today. When I asked you to come and you said that you'd be willing to come in and talk with me, I was overjoyed. I was, ecstatic that someone like you would be willing to talk to us, talk to me about what it's like to be a first responder, what it's like to deal with mental health out in the community and for yourself. So I can't thank you enough for being here. And I'm just looking forward to learning more about what you have to offer and what you have to say. So thank you.
I appreciate you having me. Again, all the time I've known you, I think I was just one of the guys that came forward with it. I was the one that needed to take better care of myself. And there's that ripple effect where, particularly in the fire service, police officers, it's like we just don't talk about that. And if you have the courage to stand up and say, hey, I'm seeing somebody, I'm taking medication, and my life's getting better, I'm improving, there's that ripple effect. So I appreciate you allowing me to be here. And if my words, our words, reach anybody else, I think that's just going to be, everybody wins.
No doubt, no doubt. So you wear many hats, as we've talked about before.
Too many.
Yeah, a lot of hats that you wear. One of them is the assistant chief. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to that point?
Certainly. As we were talking, tomorrow's my anniversary in the fire service. When I got hired very young, which was a blessing. As a firefighter, young firefighter, I had a lot of fun, basically carefree, just do my job and hang out with my buddies, and life was really good. But I was also promoted very young. I attained the rank of captain, which is a company officer, so I'm in charge of one particular apparatus and up to 5 other people. And then I had the opportunity about 5 years ago to get promoted to a shift commander, which is the assistant chief. Those opportunities don't come around very often because people are either there for a very short amount of time or they're there for a very long amount of time. So I figured let's jump on up the promotion ladder one more time. So I'm in charge of day-to-day operations on my shift. I have 20 firefighters assigned to me. I'm responsible for their training, for their safety, for emergency operations, payroll to personal problems. So one of my nicknames at work is Dad. I'm sort of like the father. I got to watch over all my kids, even though some of these guys are older than me.
So if you look back at your career, okay, and you say, okay, well, this is where I am right now. What could you point back to as maybe like one or two real pivotal moments that really helped catapult you to the next stage in your career? Maybe to go from early training as a firefighter to the next step up.
Sure. I can't really pin it down to any one or two events. Like I said, as a young fireman, I had a lot of fun, but I had a couple of not great supervisors, and I kind of was like, well, I want to do better than that. I want to make the job better than I left it or found it. So I learned a lot of what not to do. And before I got promoted to captain, I already had all the qualifications I needed to sit in my current position. So it was just going to fires, going to emergencies, difficult calls, and seeing that they could have gone better. I was like, well, I can do better. I'm pretty sure I can do better. So it was just that drive, like that fire in the belly started really early to say, I'm not setting out to be a leader. I just think this could have gone better. My counterpart, I won't speak for him, but I know he had almost the exact same feeling. So the other assistant chief is somebody I grew up with. I've known him since we were in preschool. And that's sort of like that almost self-actualization on the tip of the pyramid. It's like, well, two kids from Mystic made it, and we're running things as smoothly as possible, and we're both very similar mindsets. So,
can you talk a little bit about the call? So how do you're in the firehouse? How does it start? How do you go from A to B to C to now you're on the scene?
Sure. So one of the things, we kind of been talking before we got started about just the well-being of the firefighter, and sleep deprivation is a huge one, right? But basically, we'll get it's called a voice alarm. So the house speaker will open up with a very loud tone, and it will either stop your heart or start it going again, or dump you out of bed. So you're trying to get dressed, or you're trying to figure out what's going on. You're trying to get the information. What's the nature of the call? What's the location? Who's do I have people in the firehouse? Are they out doing other things? Are they out on other calls? So you really, it's so cliche, but you go from 0 to 100 like quick.
Really quick.
And you're just trying to gather all this information, and you're trying to make decisions in such a time compression. So we get the nature of the call. Just figure out the best route, the quickest route. And then from there, you're listening to any information that might be added. There's smoke on this floor, there's smoke caller reports this, caller reports that. And you're just processing that while you're driving, trying to not hit anything. Then you arrive on scene and, just take a minute, right? Like a Jocko thing, right? You disengage for a minute, step back, and just take it all in and figure out what actually is going on. So did the information match what you see? And does the pattern go together? And what's going to be your course of action from there? Whether it's we're pulling a hand line, I'm calling for extra help right away. So it's a fun train to ride, but it's stressful at the same time. And the longer you do it, the better you get at it. And that's one of the joys I have, is teaching newer firefighters, younger firefighters, how to do that for themselves. Because in an ideal world, you don't need me. I'll be back here, I'll run the radio, you guys just go do fireman stuff. And I imagine the same is for police officers and EMS and dispatchers. Everybody, once you get to that, I'm not a boat guy, but what's it called when it gets on plane? Just sit back, right?
Yeah.
You're in control. I'll just kind of usher.
You talk about taking a step back, and I don't know if I ever told you the story, but I was driving on the highway one day, and there was, the car stopped in front of me, and there was this car accident right in front of me, about 6 cars up, and I got out, and just like a whole bunch of other people got out, and we couldn't go anywhere anyway, so
Sure.
We have to help, and so we go and we see the guy, and he's stuck, and he's injured badly. I mean, he's bleeding and everything. It's not a good situation at all. And then we start seeing all the first responders come on, and so this is my first experience of seeing anything remotely dangerous like that. And I remember being struck by how. So I was taken back a little bit at first because I'm like, well, why isn't everybody running to the scene and trying to pull the car apart and pull this off and pull this guy out and, direct? And I look around and I'm observing and I'm like, wow, everyone's pretty calm, cool, and collected. Putting their gear on and going in, and then as soon as everyone got to the scene, it was like, the operation was smooth sailing.
Choreographed chaos.
Yeah, can you explain? Talk to people like me about who just don't know how to process that. Like we're kind of like, oh my God, get them out, save them, and you guys are like, nah, we got a process here.
So obviously safety is the number one thing. So I would have like follow-up questions. It was an interstate, was that a state road, was that a back road? Yeah. Am I looking for power lines or was a truck leaking hazardous materials somewhere? You got to resist that urge to run in because you can become a victim yourself. So that's, we tell people move with a purpose, but don't run. So if, we went across the street here and there's fire out, a couple windows, all right, we're going to move with a purpose. We're not going to run. And that's for our own safety, so we're not missing anything. And, I could talk about like these, street studies, I guess they're called, where firefighters go into a burning building, they do their job, and like, hey, what color is this house? How many cars are in the parking lot? And they're like, I don't know. It's just they're so, incident myopia is the sexy term, but they're so focused on the task in front of them. So if we could slow it down a little bit, we're enhancing our safety. We're getting more information, and we're able to, again, it's all pattern matching. But there's a pretty famous quote in the fire service, and it goes something like, when the garbage man turns the corner on a Monday morning, doesn't scream on the radio, there's garbage everywhere. It's like, no, we're just going to work, slow it down and we're going to work. We're going to do our job the way we know how.
Right. I wanted to also ask you, I've never heard that. That's a great one. That is a great one. I wanted to ask you too. So at that scene, because you're just watching. You're trying to help out, and you're watching as a bystander. But one of the other things I was struck by. So we talk about mental health, first responders, and mental health. Boy, I really saw it in action on the side of the road when family members finally got there. And I believe at the time there was. Actually, I really don't even know. I think there was a firefighter because I could tell from the outfit, obviously. Mm-hmm. But there was another first responder there. Can you talk a little bit about what that's like when, not only just in crisis like that, but maybe there's other times that you're talking with the community about certain mental health things. Maybe you see that they're anxious, that they're really depressed, or things like that.
Yeah. So. Experience is key. I really can't teach somebody how to be able to react to something like that. You got to keep in mind that when especially fire department and law enforcement and EMS, when we're responding, someone's having a really bad day. We sort of learn how to size something up and say, all right, well, that's not terrible. It looks bad. Somebody hits the airbag in the car. There's blood everywhere, but it's all right. Well, you probably broke your nose, right? It's not terrible, but they're having a bad day and they're freaking out. And if you allow yourself to get engaged in that and you pick up on that energy and you're just like, oh, it is bad. I'm sorry. It's like, it's just nothing's going to go well, Right. So you don't want to look callous when you do it, but it's like, okay, you just got to calm down. And it's really, what's the quickest way to not get someone to calm down, but tell them to calm down? Everyone's going to get their own technique where they're, they just kind of come alongside of you and just speak in a very calm voice. A couple of my guys are just amazing with that. This dude's fighting with the cops, swinging and, spitting and kicking. And one of my guys will come alongside him and just talk like we're talking. Before you know it, this dude's calmed down. And it's like, it's something you learn. But kind of to your point about our mental health, it's really important not to latch onto that and say, I'm seeing something that maybe human beings in general aren't supposed to see, and don't latch onto that where now you're going down the rabbit hole, and it's easier said than done, especially I've done it, I've latched onto things, and to use like that river analogy, man, it pulled me almost out to sea, where I was just so hung up on what I observed, or what I did or didn't do to make the situation better. So
was that something in the early part where you started to witness some things and they started to have an impact on you?
It wasn't really till I had kids, to be honest with you. I'd see some horribly effed up things in the field. It's like, well, it is what it is. It's a job you signed up for. It was after I had kids. It was like, well, what if that was me? What if that was my kid? That's when I really started looking. It's like that. What you would call it? The window broke, so to speak. Where it's like, all right, well, things could go wrong to people who didn't do anything wrong. And that's when I really started getting bogged down with what I was seeing at work. Was because I had kids and I had a wife, and we have this happy little family unit, and somebody texting and driving, drinking and driving, somebody doing something stupid in a building like this, could take that away from me. And that wasn't the best path to go down, for sure. It became very worrisome, but that for me anyway, that was after I had kids, is when
when you say path worrisome, what do you mean?
Well, you don't want to go through life, constantly worrying. You don't want to go through life in an anxiety state. Again, particularly being a first responder, you're almost there all the time. You're almost always in this cortisol cycle.
All the time.
Where you have to make a decision. It's like, well, you don't really get a chance to decompress from that, So when I go home, it's like, oh, my kids are going to walk from the bus stop to home. That's less than an eighth of a mile. What could go wrong in that eighth of a mile? And it's like you're just in like this constant worry mode, But then I try to remember, well, I was a kid once, and I would disappear in the woods for 5, 6, 7 hours, and I'm here talking to you now. So it's finding that balance, If you allow yourself to become so anxiety ridden, the world is just a horrible place full of predators and threats. And it's like, well, you can't live that way, Otherwise, barricade the door, have your groceries delivered, and you just never leave. But that's not living.
Yeah. How do you actually stop that? Like, your mind starts to wander and starts to go down, like, start catastrophizing, thinking the worst case scenario.
Yep.
How do you, snap yourself out of that, or what kind of strategies do you use to?
So in the earlier days, in the earlier stages of Jeffrey Post, heavy amounts of Miller Lights. That was a pretty good distractor. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. It causes more problems than it fixes. But a gentleman by the name of Dr. Frank Gallo, I went to spend some time with him, and he basically, this isn't therapy, he said, this is in-service training on living. This is how you can overcome things very, consciously. So it was acceptance commitment therapy. And you and I had been working through cognitive behavioral therapy, but the acceptance commitment therapy really worked well for me, where, he uses the crosshairs. So what's the situation? If you don't handle the situation, what could happen? Well, boom, 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 here's the left, right? What's the downside to the left, okay? If you handle it or you process this information in a positive way, you're up on the right, and what modality are you serving? Better husband, better father, better coworker, better son, brother, so on and so forth. Do this, here's the payoff. And I was able to adopt that and make decisions as how to cope in a positive way. It's really easy, go to the package store, go down to the bar. This is not a productive way of doing it.
We were talking earlier, and there's a study on 7,000 firefighters, and you talk about substances, and one of the percentages was 27% of firefighters experience substance abuse issues. So leads right into what you were talking about.
Sure. I think that's probably underreported as well.
Really? I think it's higher.
I think it's much higher. I don't want to install any mistrust in the community, but substance abuse disorder is pretty prevalent within the first responder community. And maybe that's just among my generation, because I do see a trend going the other way where, I mean, there's way more focus on healthy eating, working out, healthy lifestyle. But, you know, I was a very young guy, and, you know, this is how we deal with it, kid. You know, have a beer.
Just the culture?
Just the culture, yeah. We had a good fire. We were going to debrief at the pub. You know, everybody would be down there by 5 o'clock, you know. Get showered, make sure the rigs are good to go. We're going to go down there after, you know, or we're going to go off duty, just grab breakfast, and that'll roll right into happy hour. It was just the culture. And I'd imagine, at least for me, you know, it took me a really long time to say I had a drinking problem. So, you know, if you were to ask me that survey, I'd say, no, I don't have a drinking problem. So that's why I think it's underreported.
What do you think contributes to the denial of that? Are there factors in the firehouse or outside?
Like you said, the culture, right? So we're type A personalities, whether you're male or female, right? You're the alpha. You're called to fix somebody's problem, and we're all human too, you know. So as that bucket starts to fill up, you know, and you know, it could be, you know, you see somebody's possessions destroyed, and then you see a car accident, and then you see somebody who successfully did suicide. It's like, well, that stuff starts to fill up, right? You're not superhuman. So how do you deal with it? Well, you rally kind of your fellows together, your girls together, and, you know, it'll be, you know, Friday night out, right? And then, well, Friday night goes into Saturday, and then you got to maybe work Sunday, and then you pick it up Monday, and it's just like you're trying to cope with something, but it's an unsuccessful technique. And I was talking to you about Rick George earlier. That was one of the things he told me was, alcohol's not the problem, it's what you do with it, right? So if you are truly drinking to escape thinking about something, it's time to go to the next level. You need a higher level of care than self-care. But I think it's not discussed, you know? You're not told this is a positive way to cope with what you just saw or what you just had to do. And my heart does go out to police officers. I know they're not very popular in this country, but, you know, if you see or do something, we'll go back to the car accident, right? And you're charged with letting the family know what happened. You get back in that cruiser and you're by yourself for the rest of your tour.
Right.
You know, we get to go back to the firehouse. We'll put a pot of coffee on, and, you know, we'll just kind of decompress around the table. And, you know, if somebody's having a hard time, you know, we can grab it there, but not the officer that's got to go back and be left alone for, you know, 7 more hours, and then go home at 2 in the morning because that's when their shift is over, and they just have no outlet. You know, I do worry about those guys a little bit.
Let me ask you too about, you know, are there any trainings at the firehouse? Do they have anybody come in? Do they make you aware of these issues? Are they openly talked about?
So through the International Association of Firefighters, the major union for firefighters worldwide, they do have some resources available. They have a center down in the Washington, D.C. area where you can go and kind of get that in-service training for how to be a human being. But it's like anything else, man. It's underfunded. You know, most employers have the EAP program, which I did a course a couple terms ago. Basically, the efficacy of EAP is so low, where, you know, you get 3 visits with maybe a counselor you don't like, and it's like, well,
sure,
we gave it to you.
Yeah.
And so the short answer is yes, it's there. It could definitely be done better.
Yeah, in fact, in one article I was reading, it talked about possibly having a psychologist on site in the firehouse. I mean, I don't know, if you think about that, what would that look like if there was a therapist or a psychologist actually accessible? Do you think that would be of value, or would it not fit the culture?
So there's a 2-part answer there. First off, it's not my story to tell, but there's a gentleman by the name of Steve Gillespie. He's down in the he's down in the Carolinas, and I got introduced to him through another friend of mine. But he talked about after 9/11, you know, and his firehouse was hit particularly hard, where they lost a whole bunch of guys. And the job would do that. They would send psychologists and psychiatrists to the firehouses. And as he tells the story, it is a great YouTube, it's about 3 hours long. He tells that story, but basically, you know, the doc would come in, you know, try to engage in some conversation, and guys are, you know, and he's like, well, I'm going to leave. And the guys, maybe one at a time, would meet him in the parking lot. So we call it parking lot therapy, where I don't want to talk about in front of these guys, but I'll talk to you one-on-one in the parking lot.
Separate.
And that was very effective, he said. You know, and I forget the doctor's name, but, you know, he had very, very high praises for him to say, you know, this guy probably did a lot more good than he knows. So that one-on-one is, I think it's critical. Like I was telling you earlier, like I'm credentialed for crisis intervention and critical incident stress debriefing. I have kind of a hard time with that because not everybody's going to open up the same way, and we're kind of forcing you, right? We're all going to sit in this room together. You know, here's the event. What did you do? What did you do? What did you do? And maybe people don't want to talk about it. You know, it's people they wouldn't hang out with. So I think, you know, there's some improvement that needs to be done there. You know, we go to a bad call, we know we have to go to this thing. It's like, well, here's what I have to do. I have to be quiet for the next 30 minutes. It's like, that's not helpful. You know, you want to open those pathways up where you could say, hey, I was on the team of 4 people cutting this car apart. Why don't the 4 of us with a diffuser go in a different room? You know, and I think that the vicarious traumatization is definitely there. And I think it could be done better, you know. But I'm also an undergrad student, so, you know, I'm not qualified to say for sure.
Yeah, and you're still learning more and more about it.
Every day, yep. Every day.
I wanted to go back to more about what firefighters deal with, and a lot of it is about relationship problems, marriage problems, just general relationship problems, a high percentage. Does that come into the firehouse a lot? Is that something that you see often? For
sure. You know, we start off every day with a roll call. So we line up, you know, we read the riding assignments for the day, and it's really our chance to connect for the start of the tour. And one of the things we all kind of do, I can't say it's just me, is you kind of read the room. It's like, all right, well, you know, so-and-so is not looking like himself. You know, he's usually swinging from the chandelier, bouncing around. He's usually a happy-go-lucky guy. Yeah. So you make a point, you know, hey, what's going on? You know, it's like, well, you know, the dog, you know, did this, you know, wife didn't like that, you know, we got in an argument, you know, that was the last thing, you know, before I left this morning was her screaming, you know, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, you see that, and it does carry over to the firehouse. And again, some of the really good advice I got early on was, well, you're here, you can leave that home, right? You're among us right now, don't let a bad moment make a bad day. But yeah, for sure, we see it. And it's not just, you know, the dog or the kids, it's finances, it's, you know, it's, you were up till 2 a.m. drinking last night, you know, and I don't like that, you know, and now you're going to work. So I didn't have my husband on my day off, and now I've lost my husband because he's going to work, you know. So that rift is definitely there.
Yeah, it's always a struggle too, especially when I talk with clients about transitioning and compartmentalizing. So yeah, you start your day off, and then you're transitioning to work, and then you've got to be in a certain mindset, and then you get a call, and there's another mindset for that, and then you eventually you go home, and you know.
That's something I still kind of have to work through, is coming off work. You know, I'll be in firehouse mode till almost 11 o'clock in the morning. You know, it's like, you know, I don't want to give away too many of the secrets of the firehouse here, but you know, you just speak your mind the way you would at work, and your wife's looking at you, your daughter's looking at you. It's like, oh, oof, got to reel that one in a little bit. And that could definitely contribute. I mean, you mean nothing by it, but it's like, that's how you talk at work. And it's like, you're not at work anymore, you know, and it's still kind of, it puts stress, you know, it puts stress on things. Most firefighters anyway, I can't speak for EMS and law enforcement or dispatchers, but they all have side jobs too, right? So we do 24 in the firehouse, and I got to go do whatever. So you're bringing that baggage to maybe a completely different career field, you know. I would go from the firehouse to doing construction safety, and it's a different world, you know. That's corporate America, you know, working with Alston Power, General Electric, you know, these corporate people. It's like you're still in firehouse mode, and you know, it's very. We're gonna have a meeting about Friday's meeting, and it's like, this is a bunch of BS, you know. This is an email. Like, well, it's like, well, where's your attitude, you know? It's like, well, this is stupid to me. It's like, it could create financial stress too, or you're not doing so well at your part-time job because you're still looking through that lens of, you know, I'm here to go to calls, and we're not going to calls, you know, we're horsing around, you know, we're keeping the attitude light, you know, we're having a good time in a firehouse. So yeah, that transition can be difficult, and it can further weigh on guys too, you know. I hated working construction. I really did. But I did it because we needed the money. And you know, that took some physical toll on me. You know, I thought I was having a heart attack one day at like 29 years old.
Really?
Just because I hated being at a construction site. Because it wasn't the firehouse. It wasn't what I was used to. But, you know, kids got to eat. You know, you got to maintain a certain lifestyle. And how do you do that? You work, you know.
So what contributes to the multiple jobs? Is the pay really low? Like, actually, that was something I was not aware of.
So I can't say the pay is low, but you have that availability to go do it. So, you know, kids need braces, you know, or the furnace broke or whatever. You just go out, you have that opportunity to go make more money. You know, there's always overtime in the firehouse, but that, you know, that ebbs and flows. Yeah, so it's easier, you know, just go find another part-time job, and you could say, I can work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week for you. I'm in the firehouse Monday, Friday. It's like, there you go. You got 3 days of part-time work, and you just get caught up a little bit.
So a big part of my message to the community is centered around resilience and encouraging people that when there's adversity, as hard as it may be, as difficult as it is, and it's very difficult, especially in these times, to keep moving forward, keep it moving is my message. Keep fighting, give effort, don't quit, and basically expect that there's going to be barriers put in front of you, and that be creative maybe with your problem-solving skills, find some solutions, communicate with people about solutions, continue to work, don't give up. Never give up. You've had some close calls in your life, and you're here today. You're in the position you're in today because of a lot of hard work and effort and training and everything. Can you talk a little bit about those close calls?
Yeah, certainly. There was a arson fire in 2012. Gentleman was having an argument with his girlfriend, so he figured if he burned up a fast attack nuclear submarine, he could go home and either finish the argument or say he's sorry or something, I don't know. But so what I responded to that from Groton to Maine, so we had quite a bit of time to think about what was occurring. I was getting constant updates on my phone as we were moving up that way. So we arrived on scene. I got on the boat about midnight. I talked to a good friend of mine, Glenn Whitehouse, and I said, you know, Chief, what do you need? And he just starts pointing on a map. It's burning here, it's burning there, it's burning here. And I said, what the hell you guys been doing? You know, and I didn't know how difficult it would be once I got below deck. So the short story long is we were moving into a position, and you know, we were looking to attack some fire, and I fell under the water, and I wasn't real happy about that. So I was probably only under the water, and I had my face piece on, so you know, I wasn't like literally drowning, but it was a big enough shock to me that I wasn't sure how to get out of that position. And in about 30 seconds, I thanked God for everything. I prayed for my family, what the news they might hear in the morning. And basically, I couldn't hold on to where I was anymore. Like my hands were literally, I was like holding on to two structures on either side of me. And I felt myself starting to slip. And I was like, well, this is it for me. And I don't remember exactly how long I was there. It couldn't have been more than 30 seconds, but it felt like a lifetime, So, I prayed, I thought about my family, and I started really getting down on myself, man. Like, you messed up. Like, you're in this position because you made a mistake. And it's like, well, that's just it, And all of a sudden I was flying, Two guys from, I believe it was Berwick, Maine, just yanked me out of that spot. And away we went, So I didn't really think too much about it. And I was really thinking about this on the drive over here today. It's like, well, how did I arrive where I did, and that's the reverse bell curve, right? How did I end up on the bottom? It was such a roller coaster of, you guys did so good at that fire. You guys, here's an award, here's a medal, here's Disney trip, whatever, it's like, you couldn't do any wrong. And it's like, well, I messed up so bad, That was a stupid mistake that ended me in that pit. I made a mistake, I wasn't paying attention to where my feet were, right? And that's like cardinal rule, if you can't see, you crawl. Well, I was pretty confident in myself. So I made a mistake and I paid a price for that. I almost paid the ultimate price for that. And I was recalling, the rest of that night I just went about my business. I kept doing work, kept doing my thing. I was very focused on the task of putting this fire out. Got home, yada, yada, yada. It was about 2 or 3 days later. My daughter was riding in a charity ride, angel ride. My son was very small, so I had him on my shoulders. And I remember that very clearly because I have a photograph of it. He's having a great time. They're clapping for all the riders coming through the finish line. And I think my wife said to me like 4 or 5 times, like, turn around, I want to take your picture. Finally, like when she was like, Jeff, I was like, what? Like I was somewhere else,
Yeah.
I was reliving
Just not
this.
there.
Yeah, I was not there.
Yeah.
I won't call it a flashback because it was a conscious thought. And I remember because I have the picture, like I just turned, like I got this look on my face, and my son's just like, I'm just like, what? And that's really where, I use this paper analogy a lot, you have a little mental trauma, psychological trauma, right? I mean, this little rip in that paper. That paper just kept ripping for me. Once I processed that I was not in a good spot there, that paper just kept ripping. And again, you talk about resiliency, I wasn't taught how to be resilient, so that's kind of where things started breaking down for me. It's like, you're a hero, you're the man, you were the guy. And it's like, I don't feel that way. I don't want to hear it anymore, And my boss, who's like a brother to me, I was like, I don't want to hear this anymore. Like, just stop talking about it. So I was starting to compartmentalize, I was shutting down. And anytime the topic came up, I just avoided it. But I was eventually, it brought me to a really dark place by not talking about it. That's kind of where you came in, I think. That's about when I met you. My darling wife was like, you're not right. And I don't know what to tell you, but you need to go get right. And when I entered therapy for the umpteenth time, I think I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. It was like, well, I'm here because I have to be here. And again, I use the word blessing a lot because, big part of my return was re-engaging in church life. But like I was put in front of you for a reason. It wasn't just somebody else to talk to. You were engaged. You were mindful of that chip on my shoulder. You weren't forcing anything, which allowed me to say, all right, well, this guy's not balancing his checkbook. He's not thinking about something else. He's asking me questions, and they're meaningful questions. And so that was a hard fight back. I had a lot of suicidal thoughts, for a period. And that's something that, you know, at least in the fire department, you know, you don't talk about that. And well, it's important to talk about that because we lose people through the cracks, you know, and sometimes the cracks are this big. It's like there's just no support for those guys to say, hey man, I'm having a really hard time, and maybe even to the point where they've got a plan. You know, I'm gonna go to my hunting stand, it's gonna be quiet, nobody will find me, my kids won't see it. It's like, well, that's what's the word I'm looking for? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot there, you know. That's not just this guy, you know, shooting the whatever in the firehouse. Like that's, if you're not listening for that, you could miss that, and that's not fair, you know. But what did I do? You know, I self-isolated. I didn't talk about the fire. There's a lot of other life events that happened in between there, but just no self-care. You know, just ignoring it. He said, go to work, come home, you know, maybe after 36 hours, you know, I'd go work my part-time job, come home for dinner, and it's like, you're just this miserable bear.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why? A whole 24, I had a whole day to think about this and be surrounded by this. Then I had 12 hours working part-time where it's miserable and I hate it. And, you know, what do you do to keep your mind alert? So then you get home, it's like, well, I got to do this again tomorrow, another 36 tomorrow. It's like, there's just no self-care there, you know. It's a terrible loop to be stuck in, you know. Dr. Gallo called it the suck cycle. Like you're just in this cycle, and there's no exit ramp.
When you think about the memories and things that you've experienced, and we, you know, for a lot of first responders, we think about post-traumatic stress. But I could imagine the bind that first responders find themselves in when something can be traumatic, but it's, hey, it's part of the job.
Yeah.
You know, are you discouraged from expressing emotions, feelings about it to each other? Is it not part of what we do, or is it more and more opening up?
So, as always, right, it's a complicated answer. The short answer is, and I've been throughout a lot of this country and a lot of different firehouses, you know, talking with other firefighters as part of my job. It's for 100% sure, like, it's encouraged. The stigma that comes with it is, we talked about it once, right, moving on.
Oh.
So like I said, we'll come back to the firehouse, you know, we'll put a pot of coffee on, you know, maybe we'll whip up some food, we'll have a snack, and we can talk about it there. It's when a month later, it's like, man, it's still bothering me. It's like, well, I don't know how to help you. You know, you need to go get help. It's like, well, where do I go get help? I don't know, bro. Like, I don't know, sis. Like, you got to go get help, and I can't help you. In fact, like, we're such good friends, I don't want to hear what you're saying because it's painting a dark picture for me. So, like, the individual will shut down. Like, I don't want to think of you struggling, so I don't want to deal with it. At least that's been my observation. Again, we have the EAP option. Anybody can be a leader in that realm where they can say, hey, you know, Jason, come here, let's talk. You know, I noticed X, Y, Z. That definitely happens, but I can't put a number to it. But for sure, it's encouraged to talk about. But if it's a problem after that, that's where the support drops off. And I tell you what, if I have a bad night or bad call, there's only one place I want to be. That's in the firehouse, surrounded by people that were there with me. But again, I think I observed that support just falls right off, you know.
You were talking about suicide, and we obviously need continual work on suicide prevention and addressing suicide, and more people equipped with how to understand when someone expresses suicidal thoughts. And yes, we have procedures on what's the intent and is there a plan, and you know, how are they talking about it. But it's often discouraged because a lot of people don't know what to do about it. So if someone expresses it, you know, that person is not trained, for example.
Right.
Well, you know, do you have any advice for people that might hear from friends that they are suicidal on how to deal with that, how to move them in the right direction, what to say, what not to say?
Sure. So that is a hard one, right? So the bigger stigma that I really think, if I have any voice through you, is that it's not a career ender. You know, if you're a first responder and you say to somebody, I'm having suicidal thoughts, you're not going to be immediately removed from your position. You're not going to be put in a hospital. You're not, your life isn't over, you know, which is weird that like you want to end your life, but like I don't want to talk about it because it could end my life, you know. It's like, well, that's the realm that we're in, you know, is like, I don't want to live anymore, but I don't want to ruin my career. It's like, well, so it's important to talk about it, right? I was a student a couple of weeks ago at the Wheeler Clinic here in Connecticut, but it's a company based out of Canada, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's a 2-day seminar on applied suicide intervention techniques, and they walk you through how to do just that. You're not a clinician, you're not a provider. It's, you know, me to you. Hey, man, like I'm noticing this. I'm hearing you say this. Do you want to talk? And yes, they talk. They start to talk, right? They receive your invitation to talk. And then you find out, you know, that they're really not well. You're confirming your suspicions, and then you point blank ask, are you thinking about killing yourself? It's not firehouse talk. It's not locker room talk. Hey, you going to do something stupid? Well, no, you know, XYZ is stupid to me. I'm just going to go shoot myself. It's like, well, you have to ask that question point blank. Yeah. And if people answer that question in the affirmative, it doesn't mean they have to go to the hospital right away, right? So you start to evaluate what decisions do they have. You know, can you do this to get out of that funk? Can you do that? Can you stop doing this to get back on track? Get back to who you are. You know, and if that kind of goes into that cycle again, well, then it goes a different route. Versus like positive, right? Or I guess that'd be a negative feedback loop, right? We got to wait for that to stop.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to follow up with you tomorrow, and we're going to go kayaking. We're going to go hiking. We're going to start reaffirming life, and then you just kind of have to steer them towards a good self-care pathway, which I do believe is counseling, medication if appropriate, and it's just redeveloping, reconstructing your lens of life. You know, sitting in a pub drinking, that's only going to perpetuate those negative thoughts. You know, self-isolating, not talking to friends, not going out with, you know, I don't golf, but they say it's fun. You know, go do something life affirming. And so kind of a long-winded answer there, but that would be my advice, is like, you have to talk about it, and you have to be comfortable asking that uncomfortable question. You know, so if you're watching this and you're thinking of having these thoughts, you need to say something. If you're watching this and you're an upbeat, chipper person, and you see somebody that's not, ask them that question, and then be prepared for the answer you might get. You know, and that's not easy to do. You know, particularly if you're close. You know, because there's a lot of emotion that goes into that. You know, a family member. Think about that. Your brother, sister, mother, father. It's like, well, I've known you my entire life, and you're telling me these things. Like, how can you not become emotional with that? Extremely difficult, and maybe you're not the best fit for that. But you can call help, right? There's a joke, right? It's not a joke, but you know, call 912, right? If we're a first responder and you need help, call 912, right? Find somebody. If you're too deep in this and you can't see your way through it, get somebody else. Get somebody who's detached, who can help you through that.
You have lost a couple of friends.
Too many, yeah.
To suicide.
To suicide, yeah.
How have you, you know, over time learned to manage that loss?
It's definitely an ongoing process. You know, the last one was probably the one that hurt the most. He was like a father figure. He was a mentor. He was a friend. He was a teacher. He was everything. And the more I learned about the why after, didn't make it any better. So I guess the hard way of saying that is, like, I just got used to him being gone. I didn't really process it and say, here's the resolution. I just got used to him being gone. And like any grieving process, you know, I was sad about it. I was angry with him. I didn't fully accept why he did it. I still don't, but the impact it has on the people around you, whether you know it or not, it's catastrophic in some places, you know. Like I said, I can honestly say that my last friend that did this, it's not fully resolved. And again, just think about that. Would you do that to your friends? Would you do that to your family? You know, you can't shame somebody into not doing suicide. And then we collectively, you know, our group, our circle of friends here, we put it all together after he was gone. And that's traumatizing as well to say, you know, we could have intervened. We tried, you know, we all did. But nobody asked him that question. Are you thinking of doing this? We just knew he was in a rough spot. So I think that's probably the bravest thing any one of my brothers or sisters who are first responders could do is ask that question. You could have medals out to here. You go to somebody and you say, are you thinking of killing yourself? And they say yes, and you were able to intervene. That is the bravest thing you could do. Because you're really laying it on the line, right? If you're wrong, hey, you're wrong. Whatever. You know?
Exactly.
What are you, nuts?
Yeah.
No. I'm wrong. Whatever. Cool. We'll talk about this tomorrow and the day after until we're old.
Yeah.
But if you don't and they're gone, well, it's a missed opportunity.
Has faith been a big part of your recovery, your life?
For sure. I always had a relationship with God, but I never really was part of a church. And that's really nobody's, you know, that's nobody's fault or anything. But a friend of mine was deploying to the Middle East and went to his send-off party, and it was at his mom's house. And she said, well, you're a guest in my home, so I do insist that you talk to my pastor before you partake in the festivities. And he and I just hit it off. And it wasn't, you know, God is a magic man on the moon who grants wishes. It was really meaningful conversation. And it was a simple invitation too. Come by on Sunday at 10. And I did, and I loved it. I felt at home. The message that I belonged there, you know, felt very included. So yeah, it's a big part of my process still, you know, is to regularly attend church. I'm very active in some of the, particularly the men's group, where we get to talk kind of like you and I are talking. It's you have that opportunity to be vulnerable. You are not going to be judged. And we talk about life's problems. I mean, we're not just reading from the Bible. We talk. And every so often, like a scripture may apply, but it's self-care for us, you know. I don't push that at anybody. You know, I definitely leave it out of the firehouse. It's my choice, and I understand some people don't look at things the way I do, but it's been immensely helpful to me.
If someone is thinking about incorporating faith, you know, because there's a lot of people that start to consider, you know, should I believe in something? Should I be more hopeful? Should I have more faith? And it could be in whatever higher being it is for them.
Right.
Or higher power, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. If someone is really thinking about it, what's some just simple advice you could give them to help with that process?
I think that the best thing any one person can do for themselves in that arena, and I hate to say shop, but you have to find a place that you belong. You know, again, I make a lot of jokes. I'm very fluent in sarcasm, but a couple of years ago, my wife asked, what are you going to give up for Lent? Because we were attending a Catholic church, and I said, I'm going to give up being Catholic. Like, I don't connect there. I don't feel connected to the God I believe in. And I found a place that did. So, but I'm definitely not downplaying Catholicism. You know, it's all good, right? You can't go wrong if you feel like you belong. That's my best advice, is find a place you belong.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, I want to thank you for being here and sharing all of this and being open and really forthcoming about your life and struggles that you've dealt with. And I hope it's actually the first of many conversations between you and I.
Sure.
Because I think you just have so much to offer the community. And you've been an inspiration to me through our talks. Every time I talk to you, I always feel like I learned something new. I always feel inspired. I always feel like I have gained something. So I've also learned in my profession too, with helping people, it's not just me helping others, it's others helping me. And it's really a two-way street. So I want to thank you for being just so genuine and it's also so compassionate towards people that I know that you have been helping throughout the years. And I know you will continue. I just know you, and I know you will continue to do that for people. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And it is a two-way street. Between you, Dr. Kane, Dr. Gallo, you've inspired me to the next leg of my career. I am studying to be an LPC. It's a way for me to give back. And again, you know, I can't thank you enough. It's because of you I'm still here. And it's really important, right? You got to find that relationship. You've got to be courageous enough to reach out. You got to be uncomfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's not the career ender. You know, that's my big message is seeking help is not the career ender. They're not going to medically retire you. They're not going to take your gun or your badge, and you know you can get better. And that was the biggest obstacle I encountered when I re-entered therapy. Is like there's just no way I can get over this hill, and I stood on top of that hill, and I got over it. You know, it took a long way though. You know, and my best friend in life, great advice. He says, "You didn't get lost in the woods overnight. You ain't walking out overnight." So,
love that.
You know, I was in some really dark spots, and it wasn't going to be take this pill and talk to this guy once a month. You know, they took the work. It took work. So I thank you.
You're welcome. I want to thank Chief Post once again for sharing his truly personal and professional experiences. I hope to have Chief Post on again in the future, so please post any questions or words of encouragement you may have. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and pass this along to those you believe it may help. Thank you for watching, and as always, be where you are, be resilient.